Welcome back to StabtheDragon Productions for episode number 68, August 29th, 2022, for whiskey review number 40, as today we continue our study of North Texas whiskeys primarily. I've thrown a few other ones in along the way. An announcement about that at the end of today's review. Today we're looking at Unbendt straight wheat whiskey bottled in bond. Unbendt. Just the facts. Unbendt is not a bourbon. This is not a wheated bourbon. This is a straight wheat whiskey bottled in bond from Bendt Distilling Company in Lewisville, Texas, located in Denton County, about 41 miles from my house. Now, a straight wheat whiskey has to be a mash bill of at least 51% wheat and then aged for at least 2 years in charred oak. But since this is bottled in bond, it's been aged for the minimum of 4 years. This is a 750 milliliter bottle. I paid $50.99 at Goody Goody in August of this year here in Fort Worth. Total score that I gave this whiskey, a 91. Letter grade, A+. Recommendation. This is a fantastic whiskey. And it's the only wheat whiskey I've ever had, okay? It has a touch of the Texas funk, but maybe not enough to scare off those of you who don't much care for that. As a bottled in bond, this has got plenty of kick to it, but it's also very smooth. If you're drinking your way around Texas whiskeys, I think this is a must try. If you want a powerful introduction to Texas whiskeys, this is a great start if you like the higher proofs. Now, I know some of you are going to say 100 proofs not high, but hey, it is for a lot of people. So this is just a great start for Texas whiskeys. It does have a kick. So if you are sensitive to that 100 proof, then maybe you want to try this on ice or in a cocktail. This whiskey, I think, is going to put up some stiff competition in my upcoming Texas whiskey tournament. I think it compares favorably with TX Bourbon bottled in bond, which is also it's a wheater. It's not a wheated. It's not a straight wheat whiskey. TX bourbon is a wheated bourbon. Okay, so it's got wheat somewhere in the mash bill. Details. Let's go to the details now. History. Unbent straight wheat whiskey and Bent number 5 are the whiskeys produced from what used to be the Witherspoon Distillery in Lewisville. Founded in 2012 by Quentin Witherspoon and Natasha and Ryan DeHart, it is now Bendt Distilling, and they are doing away with the Witherspoon line. The Witherspoon line is now reduced to a bottled old-fashioned mix. Okay, and I don't know what happened there between Witherspoon and the DeHarts. I don't know if there was just a retirement. He just sold out. Who knows? I do not know that. The Witherspoon name does not show up anywhere on the website except for that old-fashioned mix that they sell. So it seems like the DeHarts now have just taken it in a different direction. In 2019, an edition of the Whiskey Advocate said that the Witherspoon distillery had sold a minority interest to Sazerac in 2015. I don't know for sure. I haven't been able to double check that. I did hear on another whiskey podcast that something like that had occurred. So I do kind of have two sources for that. You know, companies do that when they're a little bit undercapitalized, I think. But again, I don't know the details. Bent number 5 was their first release under the new name, and that's an American blended whiskey. And the interesting thing about that, I think that's a direct progenitor to Unbendt. Okay, here's why. When the company talks about Bendt number 5 as a blend, they from grain to glass have distilled all the grain whiskeys that go into that blend, and wheat was one of them. Wheat, rye, barley, corn, and so they had separate distillation process and aging for all those whiskeys, and then they make their American blend, which is good, but it's just exceptionally sweet for me. It's too sweet for my taste, but it was good. So this whiskey, the wheat straight wheat whiskey, I think is a natural product from what they were doing to achieve their blend. So that's what I think is going on here. This whiskey, this year in 2022, won in the New York International Spirits Competition double gold for wheat whiskeys. Okay, but guess what? Wheat whiskeys as a class are very minor, very small, very few. And this is the only wheat whiskey that I've ever had. I've had a handful of other ones that had wheat as part of the mash bill, but this is the dominant grain in the mash bill. So wheat whiskeys are out there, but very few, okay? But still double gold at the New York International Spirits Competition, that speaks well for this whiskey. So for the history, 4 out of 5 points for Unbendt. And again, this is a young whiskey distillery, so I don't have a whole lot of information, and they don't have a whole lot of other history behind it. Now let's talk about marketing, bottle, packaging, etc. I have seen some Facebook ads for this whiskey, and it may be because I did some searching, and of course you know how the algorithms work. Once you do a search for a product, you get a lot of that product on your feed. But so that's the only advertising that I've seen. I have been able to read, a couple of smaller reviews. I did not find anything on YouTube about this whiskey. So I did find it though in at least it's in all 3 of the major liquor stores here in Fort Worth, and that's Goody Goody, Specs, and Total Wine. So it's there. I bought mine at Goody Goody, but it's everywhere. So that's a good thing. Marketing, bottle, packaging. This bottle is the kind of a classic tall Western style whiskey bottle. It does have I think that's a real cork. I don't know. It looks real, but no, I think this is man, is that real? This is a real cork. Yeah, a real cork. There you go. So that's a bonus. It's got this nice strip that goes over the bottle cap, and the bottle cap itself is wood. So it's wood on cork. The information on the back side, it's got the government warning, distilled and bottled by Bendt Distilling Company, Lewisville, Texas, but it doesn't have a hoo-ha statement. All right. On the front, authentic Texas whiskey, and that's important. And it says that on this little piece of here at the top too. And it's got all the information here, straight wheat whiskey, bottled in bond, aged in oak, 50%, 100 proof, 750 milliliter, small batch distilled and aged by Bendt Distilling, Lewisville, Texas. So it's really not, they didn't overdo it on the label at all, but something I like about this, the label is brown, right? You see that brown label? But the whiskey inside at times seems darker than the label. It does have a reddish tint to it. So clear glass, real cork, understated label. That's really very nice. I'm going to say 4 out of 5 for bottle, marketing, and packaging. Composition. The mash and grape says the mash bill consists of Denton County soft winter red wheat, Denton County yellow corn malted barley, aged 4+ years in a 53-gallon standard bourbon barrel at 3.5 char. So that's, a little bit heavier than normal char. The Top Shelf Treasures says this: the Unbendt whiskey series takes unblended whiskey into new territory with a world-class lineup of craft distilled straight grain to glass whiskeys. Unbendt straight wheat whiskey is crafted from local soft red winter wheat, soft, creamy, and reminiscent of fresh from the oven baked goods. Which that statement by Top Shelf Treasures leads me to think, if this is a whiskey series, again, like I said, from the Bendt 5 mash bill where they distilled all those grains and then blended it, that leads me to think that there's going to be a rye that follows, and maybe a corn whiskey that follows. I'm kind of excited about this one, really, because the quality here is really quite good. So I'm interested in this. Now, let me again reiterate what a straight wheat whiskey is. It's got to be at least 51% of the mash bill is wheat. It's got to be aged for 2 years in charred oak barrels. But this is a bottled and bond, so it's 4 years in a government-controlled warehouse, whatever that means. ATF, I guess, is involved with that. So now there are some similarities with this whiskey and the TX Bottled and Bond Bourbon, which is made by Firestone Robertson here in Fort Worth. The flavors kind of match, and that's because TX Bourbon is a wheater. It's got wheat as part of the mash bill, so I think there's some similarities here. I'll be real interested to try these two together in the competition and see if I can identify them blind and see which one comes out on top. So for composition, 13 of 15, because the website really didn't give me anything about this composition. I didn't see anything from the distillery on this. The information I got is from a couple of reviewers. So who knows if they're accurate or not. I don't know, but 13 points there. Physical appearance of this whiskey. Again, notice the brown to reddish tint, color very dark. Similar in some ways to Iron Root whiskeys that I've been reviewing the past month. Aged this long in Texas, yeah, it's going to be dark. Here it is in the glass, and again, you can see a little bit of that red tinge going on there. So that's fairly dark whiskey. I'm going to say 4 out of 5 points for the appearance. Nosing. Now my inadequate nose strikes again. I can smell something. Some sweetness. I can tell it's a whiskey, but it's not a bad alcohol vapor going on there. So it's generally pleasant. I don't think I'm getting any of the Texas funk. No spice on the nose, really. It's pretty vague, so we'll give it the standard 7 points out of 10. Now for the all-important tasting. Wow. That's delicious. That mild sweetness hits you immediately, but it's not too sweet. Does have a little bit of the Texas funk, but not overpowering. It's not like a Balcones. It's not like an Iron Root. It's, so the Texas funk is definitely there, but it's muted a little bit. Some barrel char, and that's what the Texas funk is. It's the barrel char interacting with the Texas heat, right? And so it kind of magnifies that char. This is smooth. There's no offensive alcohol flavor, although this is 100 proof, so you do get the burn. Carries a punch, but there's some fruitiness there, dark fruits like maybe plum or fig. The sweetness can be kind of a toffee with some spice notes, I think. Hints of toast, maybe. Yeah, that's really quite amazing stuff. Very good. To me, there is a similarity with the TX bourbon. Definitely. That wheated bourbon and this straight wheat whiskey. There's a relationship there. You can tell that what the wheat does there. So that's really quite amazing. For 100 proof to be that smooth, that's very good. Tasting, 24 points out of 25. The mouthfeel and finish. This has an excellent mouthfeel. It's creamy. You get a nice spicy burn, but nothing offensive. But it's 100 proof. It's got some kick to it. Gets up in my sinuses in a nice way, which I like. Okay. If you don't like the burn, if you want a totally creamy, smooth whiskey, well, there's some Irish whiskeys I can recommend. But uh, this Texas whiskey, I mean, it's got a mouthful of a punch going on there. There's no real Texas hug going down though. And I've had some 80 proof whiskeys that gave you more of a burn going down than this. So you don't have to worry about that, I don't think. It does have quite the long finish. I mean, my mouth still has some lingering taste of that toffee and wood and char going on there. The spices, it's still tingling. And as a bottle and bond, it should have that, right? 100 proof. So it's got an appropriate kick. But man, this is lovely. That's a nice, robust mouthfeel and finish. I'm going to say 15 out of 15 for that. I mean, there's just nothing wrong with that at all. That's close to perfection right there. 15 points for mouthfeel and finish. Price, value, and availability. I've got this at Goody Goody just last week for $50.99. Total Wine has it listed for $53.99. I did not go check it out. Specs website, which is the worst website of the three, says they don't have it, but I've been to Specs. I've seen this in Specs. I almost bought it at Specs, but I didn't. I bought something else that day. So it's at all three of the liquor stores here in Fort Worth, the big box stores that I go to. This is a great craft whiskey. It's a bottled and bond, so this is for just over $50. You know, I mean, Total Wine lists it for $53.99, so you're getting close to 60 there. But that's still a fair price for a craft whiskey. Won a double gold. It's a straight wheat whiskey, so it's unusual. It's craft. You know, this is high end stuff here. So I think the price is fair, and its availability is excellent. So 10 out of 10 for price, value, and availability. Definitely. Neater mixer. Of course I like it neat. If you watch my videos, you know I do everything neat. I've tried some high proof stuff on ice and it just ruins it for me. But I've also tried some cocktails at a local distillery and they were magnificent. I think Unbendt would be fantastic in a cocktail. Absolutely. The proof will hold up. The flavor's going to hold up. If you're scared of the high proof stuff, like 100 proof is too much, I think if you did this on ice, it would hold up. I think the flavor would be good for you. So really neater mixer, 5 points all the way. Bonus points, clearly 5 points. Local to me, fantastic whiskey, yeah, 5 bonus points. So that gives me my total score of 91. And again, my number scores versus my letter grades. My letter grade emphasizes the flavor, the taste, the mouthfeel. And so A+ on the letter grade. Recommendation. To me, this is really fantastic whiskey, and it's the only wheat whiskey I've ever had, so this is a new experience to me. It does have a touch of the Texas funk, but if you've tried Texas whiskeys and you don't like that that char, that smoky flavor, the wood that Texas is famous for, you might give this a try because that's muted a little bit, and for sure if you put this on ice, I think that would help. As a bottled in bond, I mean, this has got plenty of kick to it, but at the same time, it's remarkably smooth. So if you're drinking your way around Texas, I think it's a must try. If you want a great introduction to Texas whiskeys, this would be a place to start. Because even though it's an oddball as a wheat whiskey, I think it represents Texas very well. There's so many similarities between this and Iron Root and TX and Acre and Silver Star. They all there's a similarity there because of Texas, right? So I think this would be a great representative of Texas for you to try. It does have a kick, so just keep that in mind. Ice or cocktail if you're sensitive to that. And I really do think this whiskey is going to put TX bourbon and even Iron Root, give them some serious competition when I do my tournament later on. My conclusion, this may be the conclusion actually of my studies of North Texas whiskeys. Maybe. There's a lot more North Texas whiskeys out there that I've not reviewed, but frankly I'm out of space, time, and money. I still have several other Texas whiskeys in my cabinet that I'm now going to move into, such as Balcones, and then a handful of others from further south. So now I'm moving out geographically out of North Texas into the hill country and further south with my whiskey studies. But when I do the tournament, it's going to be an all Texas whiskey tournament. So I've got to do these other studies of Balcones and then some other things that bring them in. So that I hope to start that tournament in February. It's going to take me from now till February to get through the rest of the whiskeys in my cabinet, Texas whiskeys. And there's another category that I'm going to say is ought to be, wannabe Texas whiskeys. So we'll see what those are. So that's the plan right now. But literally, there's likely 100 other Texas whiskeys that I've not tried. Texas is just exploding in distilleries. We can't do them all. Don't have the time, space, or money. But that does it for this edition of Stab the Dragon. Be smart. Avoid drinking and driving or boating and swimming out here.